Our agenda includes 3 topics. First, devices industry updates by segments. Then we'll go over industry challenges and mitigation strategies to those challenges before we get into the AI opportunity for devices vendors. So reiterating what Haley said a moment ago, today presenting will be myself, Ben Carbonneau, also joined by Ezra, Principal Analyst, who will be going over the AI piece, and Alek, who's also a devices analyst at TBR, who will be touching on the segment updates. So with that, I will hand it over to Alek.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak today. Awesome. So to start off with, we're going to run through our segment updates for this quarter. So to start off with PCs, during 1Q23, we saw vendors reporting that their channel inventory levels were beginning to normalize. We also saw component costs continue to fall during the quarter, helping to somewhat offset the impacts of increased price competition that led to a slight reduction in average revenue per unit during the quarter.
I can't hear you now.
PC demand continues to be impacted by market saturation caused by a surge of purchases during the beginning of the pandemic, as well as tightened corporate IT budgets stemming from macroeconomic uncertainty. So all of this resulted in a double-digit contraction in PC revenue among TBR's benchmarked vendors during 1Q23. And then moving on to smartphones. So we saw some similar dynamics play out to PCs during 1Q23, with vendors continuing to clear their excess channel inventory. The market also continues to be impacted by saturation, with Apple being the only one of TBR's benchmarked vendors to see year-to-year revenue growth in smartphones during the quarter. So Apple's performance was also negatively impacted by anticipation for the upcoming release of its iPhone 15 lineup. From a go-to-market perspective, we're still seeing foldables as the next big thing in terms of form factor, led by Samsung's Z Fold lineup, as well as Lenovo's Motorola Razr, the latter of which saw new releases during June. Tablet revenue continues to slide on a year-to-year basis, with 1Q23 seeing a decline in the low double digits. Demand for tablets remains low after an influx of purchases during the pandemic, when consumers were purchasing them en masse for learn-from-home and entertainment purposes. Tablets simply haven't reached the point of becoming an essential or nearly essential device in the same way that smartphones and PCs have. And most consumers who realized they needed one during the pandemic and still need one already own one, leading to that stagnation in demand. This dynamic is also exacerbated by macroeconomic headwinds, which have caused a general downturn in demand for consumer electronics in recent quarters. While smart device revenue contracted slightly year-to-year because of that reduction in consumer electronic demand I just mentioned, they're becoming an increasingly important part of the device's ecosystem. Just to give kind of a rundown of what we're looking at in terms of the range of devices that belong in this category, first to mention would be smartwatches. Smartwatches continue to dominate the smart device space, with vendors like Apple and Samsung promoting the health, fitness, and personal safety features built into their wearable devices. On the commercial side, one of the emerging trends here is hybrid work solutions coming from vendors like Lenovo, as well as HP Inc. under its Poly brand. And then lastly, we have AR and VR devices here under our smart devices umbrella, with the most notable example being Apple's recently announced Vision Pro headset. And then finally, we have PC services, where OEMs continue to work to expand their portfolios to generate long-term revenue growth, especially as PC demand remains low. Most of the revenue we see here is going to come from support and maintenance services, and especially extended warranties. The general trend in the PC services space is towards users buying more services and more expensive services as the lifespans of PCs become longer. Vendors are also focused on building out their device as a service and PC as a service offerings to capitalize on the growing popularity of subscription-based purchasing models. New releases in the PC services space during 1Q23 include Dell's Apex Managed Device Services and Lenovo's Digital Workplace Solutions. And then I'm going to go ahead and send it back to Ben.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Alek. So kind of as Alek alluded to here, we're seeing weak demand across pretty much every segment of the devices market. And in some segments, we're seeing elevated levels of supply, really causing that intense price competition between vendors, putting downward pressure on vendors' margins. However, in these down cycles, we see organizations employing a number of strategies, both to reduce costs and to protect margins from erosion. And that is what I will be discussing over the next two slides. So first, I'll talk about cost reduction strategies and some of the things we're seeing organizations do, in the devices space, but also not limited to devices. You'll also see a lot of organizations, in other down markets doing this as well. First is to triage debt repayment. So think about things like paying down variable rate loans as interest rates rise. Basically just servicing the debt that has the highest interest rate to bear the least interest expense. With respect to foreign exchange rate fluctuations and rising interest rates, we'll see organizations continuing to hedge against these by engaging in purchasing rate swap contracts. Importantly, I think right now, another thing that we're seeing is the careful management of inventory. So here, one thing that comes to mind is I know that HP in previous quarters has made strategic component buys when it made sense. So with component prices falling, we do always, right now, I think the main trend we're hearing in the devices market is that everybody's trying to reduce their inventory in the channel, but having some inventory of components that are expected to increase in price could be beneficial. So it really comes down to kind of a cost-benefit analysis, considering the cost of holding the inventory versus the forecasted cost savings in the future as those prices do increase. Next, we see a reduction in SKUs and an optimization of the supply chain. So during COVID, with the supply constrained in such a way that it resulted in a lot of mismatched componentry, which spurred some vendors, including HP, to increase the number of SKUs that they had in their lineup, which is costly. So now as supply chain conditions have eased, supply constraints have eased, we're seeing that those companies reduce those SKUs and kind of bring it back down to a more manageable portfolio. With respect to optimizing the supply chain, companies are going to be looking at trying to use the same componentry in multiple different products. It's just a cost-saving measure. It also, reduces complexity in the builds as well. Lastly, we're seeing a reduction in spend on services, and these are primarily third-party services, and organizations are really doing that across the industry. My next slide here, I'll talk about margin protection strategies. So first, and foremost, I should say, is rebalancing of resource spend allocations. So to really try to maintain those operating margins or at least limit margin erosion, we're seeing companies funnel their resource spend away from poorly performing business units to support higher margin and better opportunities for growth. I believe, later in 2022 and the beginning of the year, we heard about a lot of tech layoffs happening. That there's large reductions in SG&A around devices and PCs, where some companies, including Lenovo, Dell, those companies that have both the PC and infrastructure businesses, are really funneling more of their resource spend toward those infrastructure businesses amid that high demand from those cloud service providers. Second, an increase in premium mix, and this is something that's not new. All companies have been trying to do this, right? But the increase in premium mix really comes down to training and incentivizing direct and indirect salespeople to sell more premium offerings. And it's not just those premium products, but it's also incentivizing those salespeople to sell more attached services, more attached peripherals, and things like that. Attach is always at the forefront of these businesses' minds, right? They always want to get that attached revenue. They always want to get a better pen rate, but it becomes even more of a focal point in such a down market. Third, I have focused on pockets of relative demand strength. I think a great example of that coming out of the pandemic would be hybrid work devices. So think about like Lenovo's smart collaboration portfolio, things from HP from their acquisition of Poly. That was a pocket of relative demand strength when we knew PCs was crashing. So we saw companies focus their investment there. However, that remains still a very small part of total smart devices revenue as TBR sees it, with, again, kind of going over what Alek said, smartwatches really being the main driver of smart device revenue. Lastly, I have center R&D investments around high margin opportunities. This is pretty self-explanatory and I think leads us well into our next section.
We believe that the new innovations in AI will make PCs better, much better, and ultimately they will help drive a hardware refresh. They present a promise for doing everything you do with your PC better, handling messages, documents, presentations, models. LLMs can help you create them, can help you review them, can help you find them when you've stored them. And basically, it makes all the tasks that you do with a PC better. Basically, increases the capacity of the PC to do the kinds of things that you do with a PC. So it starts with making suggestions about creating things, messages, documents, etc. Goes on to help you polish them. It helps you find the software commands and services you need to perform the operations you need to get what you want, and then helps you find the things you've created. It can walk you through the steps. It can help you even create your own scripts and automation, things that are hard to do because the languages are difficult and awkward, where an LLM-based system can help you do them much more flexibly and adaptively, with much more awareness of the contingency that drive an automation process. Now, it can also make suggestions as what you could do differently, but that's a delicate matter, as we all remember, or some of us remember, from the days of Clippy. For those of you who don't, it was Windows Microsoft attempting to get Windows to make suggestions. It was met with a lot of humor and criticism. Basically, LLMs will make PCs better at what they're good at, which is being an everything tool. It is the next step in the evolution of the PC. And the key to this puzzle is going to be Microsoft. Microsoft is going to create the enablement, will create the AI tools for the base operating systems and for Office, and will provide tools that third parties can use to add those capabilities to what they will add to the platform. Now, that's PCs. In the world of smartphones, you're going to see Google acting in that fashion, and Google is very aggressive in AI, and you will see Apple acting that fashion in both its realms. But Microsoft is the key for the PC realm. The current situation is that while there is AI in various places on various PCs, there are no killer apps. Nothing is driving the need for a refresh or even to acquire a particular kind of PC for the AI capability. And they will not drive a refresh cycle. And some of the things that AI has been used for, which is accessibility and privacy protection, similarly nice to haves, but not enough to trade in your old PC for. The Microsoft is working with silicon providers to help enhance the capabilities of AI on PC platforms, and specifically, Microsoft incorporated a Qualcomm NPU, neural processing unit chip, in one of its recent Surface models. It's going to be using it for things like enhancing the conferencing experience and enhancing the recognition experience. There is continued development along those lines for workstations and gaming PCs to sell the new AI PCs, and games could really use AI. So let's talk about the progression of AI from the cloud to the PC, the thing that will potentially drive faster refresh rates and adoption rates for PCs. Now, LLM training is all cloud-based in these humongous models that run on gigantic data centers at enormous expense and generating enormous amount of heat and consuming enormous amounts of power and putting enormous amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Edge devices, including PCs, do a certain amount of AI, but they're doing they're not creating or training the models. They're doing the acting on the models, on the implementation. They consume cloud LLM output, but they don't, and they perform inference tasks, sometimes using, in the case of edge devices, some specialized chips, but it's not training on the PC. The inference is on the edge, and it can be done using PC hardware. There are not a lot of instances of people using anything other than CPUs for inference and acting on LLM stuff, but Adobe has both used GPUs in general and specifically has had extensions for NVIDIA using their CUDA software package. The latest Adobe AI stuff does not use onboard silicon. It's entirely cloud-based. The final chip in this possibility of things to run is the neural process unit, the NPU. There are a number of them out there. Qualcomm has one, Samsung has one. It's not clear that they're terribly similar devices. It's not clear that it's a particularly well-defined processor, but it's basically the next generation of AI-oriented processors seeking to mitigate some of the drawbacks that you have with GPUs, with the cost and power consumption and things like that. And the current AI on PCs uses mostly the CPU, uses the other things to a limited extent, but it's fairly limited. They do recognition, vision and video, and the Adobe products use them. But what we see going forward is two waves to incorporate the benefits of LLM into the PC. Both waves are new. These are not the things that have happened up to now. This is not a continuation of the AI progress that we've made so far on the PC. This is different, coming out of the very rapid evolution of the large language models, the LLMs. And they are, as I described, AI everywhere on a PC, making it a super PC, much more powerful and much easier to use, enough to want to get a model that can do this most effectively. We will see that in Windows and all the Office, and then in every other application based on the tools that Microsoft will provide. The first wave will be primarily cloud-based. The operations will be performed in the cloud, the interactions will be in the cloud. They will work well on current PCs, but the second wave will work much better. They'll be based on the cloud models, but we'll have a subset of the cloud model to do local training. And it will benefit from the new processors, whether a GPU, NPU, or another kind. Those things will work better when you've got one of these processors. The processor will be converged on. Microsoft basically is going to make the decision about what the processor is best for doing this on a PC, and that will form the standard design. And what will happen then when you have these new processors being, if not necessary, then extremely helpful for driving the new super PC, is that those processors evolve quickly. What we've seen now as PC life cycles lengthen is that the incremental change for each development cycle on any of the components is relatively small. The early days when we're talking about a AI coprocessor, those refresh, the development will be faster, and it'll drive more than one quicker refresh cycles. So that's entirely good news, I think, if not immediate good news for the PC industry. So why do we see two waves, and when? The cloud-based AI will be very good, but it's probably going to be slow. It has to round trip to the data center, and it has to operate in the data center. And it's probably going to be expensive. The way that cost is passed on to the buyer is not clear. But at the back end, doing the modern AI is expensive. And it provides limited customization of the PC. You'll be able to download things to your PC that the cloud-based AI creates that might be scripts and things like that. But the PC but the cloud AI doesn't really learn about you, what you need to do, and what your preferences are. The second wave will train a subset of the LLM on the PC, and will learn more about the user, and they'll be fast, less expensive, and enabled to make the PC a more personal device. Credit to HP's advertising campaign of 15 years ago. So the big question, when is this going to happen? These, of course, are necessarily estimates based actually on more traditional development cycles. Things may have accelerated, but it's pretty aggressive here. I think there's little question that we will have early first wave betas of the Microsoft enhancements within the year, and probably sooner than that. But I still think it'll be 2 years to a finished product, one that has gone through the necessary training and development. At the same time, work will be being done on onboard training. And so at the 2-year mark, you'll begin to see the betas of onboard training on a PC, followed by a 3-year to the second wave estimate. We think this is very, very exciting. There's many hype cycles that we try not to climb on, but this one is absolutely real. So thank you very much. And again, my deepest apologies for this demonstration of why we need a smarter, more intelligent PC. Thank you. Please ask us your questions. Okay.
Wonderful, thank you. Ben, I think we're gonna
So the first question is, do we
Q&A.
see an increase in the number of customers who prefer to purchase using an as-a-service model compared to the purchase model, the CapEx? And are the vendors who have a DaaS program report increases in DaaS adoption? It's still small. The sales cycle is long, but yes, we see more customers preferring to purchase using an as-a-service model. Question: who in the end-user compute ecosystem are impressing you the most, and what best practice are they doing that is getting your attention? That's a very good question. I think the major players, in this case, Microsoft and Apple, are doing very well. I think all the PC vendors are doing well within the constraints of the PC market, that the platform has to be uniform. So the potential for differentiation is kind of limited. But these are absolutely superb devices. And in fact, the excellence in the devices is a problem in that people don't see a compelling need to refresh them as often as they had. But we see some things changing with that going forward. Okay, and this is another end-user compute question. And what best practice are they attending? The best practice is close attention to what the user needs. all these companies do extensive testing, and that's really all you can do at this point. You can have blazing insights as to what would be a good idea, but without testing, it's without value. You really have to see what the user experience is and how users react. Okay, so the question, I get a clarification on the question around AI in regards to end user compute. What are the best practices in AI that are interesting you the most? Right now, I think the best practice is to refine with a lot of, again, testing. The hardware vendors are doing interesting things within the scope of what they can do. There's things that manage sound, that manage vision, that manage video. There's a little bit, as I said, for Adobe, for some of the more exotic image processing, more powerful image processing. But there are limits on what can be done with AI without the AI penetrating the whole user platform. Okay. Do I have an estimate for the price increase of an AI PC? That is going to be a typical battle between cost of goods and high competition. When supply is plentiful, margins are thin. What is going to be the cost? It'll have a new processor. It will be expensive in the early days. It'll be expensive to get a more powerful version of it. I don't think users will hesitate to pay more for that facility. So I think you are going to see the potential for price increases for the AI capabilities. Of course, everything else gets cheaper, but still, I think, given it's a better, more useful device, and one that can justify a higher price if the cost goes. What are your thoughts on Microsoft's dynamic cloud announcement for cooperative hybrid inference? I have not seen that announcement. I presume from its name, cooperative hybrid inferencing, it means it's a first step toward, but this is still inferencing, this isn't training, toward moving part of the process of using AI out of the data center and into the devices. But I don't know, I haven't read the report. As I said, the challenge is doing training on the PC. There's lots of initial research and claims and designs and so on about providing a subsetting of large language models to put them on smaller devices, but I think it's still pretty much in the lab. With faster evolution of the GPU chip, do you see that driving faster refresh cycles? Either, whichever chip is settled on as the AI coprocessor on the PC, that one will evolve. The GPU still has a lot of room to evolve, but it also has room to evolve as a AI focused rather than general purpose that's used for AI chip. I think here you have the issues here are power consumption, which is an issue even on a PC. You may not be heating the room, but you have much lower battery life if you have a power consuming component on your motherboard. So a refinement of the GPU in the direction of specialization in AI training with reduction of power is clearly something on NVIDIA's agenda, as well as all the other GPU vendors. But frankly, the GPU is too general purpose to be really optimized for AI, and it has more power for lots of functions that AI doesn't need. It has more precision than you need and things like that. Whether what evolves is a new generation of GPUs or a newly named device that may be a new generation of GPUs is unclear. but I do see better devices driving refresh cycles as they adapt quickly to the new needs.